Oh, and let's not forget the infertility stuff.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that blew my mind. So they tested birth control on Puerto Rican women in the 50s as part of a larger government initiative called La Operación, and they were giving these women 10 times, at certain points, 10 times the amount of birth control they were supposed to, and it actually there's 3 potential deaths linked to it, and none of that was ever investigated, and by 1982, a third of the women in Puerto Rico were actually completely sterilized, and now they're suffering from a declining birth rate. Has this guy ever crashed when you were doing the show?
No, maybe you can be the first.
This is the final episode.
Yeah.
That would be the final episode.
Yeah. All right, we're rolling.
Well, yeah. I was saying that I think I'm gonna maybe start doing focus a lot more on doing podcasts and less on the trolling for the time being.
And why is that?
I just feel like I'm a little bit more grown up. Owning a business, having a kid on the way, just a bunch of these. Becoming a family man, I just feel as though, and then also seeing the landscape of social media, it's just turned into like the state mental hospital, and I'm kind of like,
I think it's been like that a long time though.
No, but it's really been like that. Like when I first started doing this, when I really was doing this, like I was going out and putting my physical safety on the line. I was putting my like financial well-being on the line. I was putting my social standing on the line, just making a fucking idiot of myself at these council meetings, at these protests, and just like imitating like a lot of these tyrannical ideas to a T. Because, like fighting against woke fascism is like a big deal, right? Like it really is. I felt as though I was doing something culturally meaningful and insignificant. Now you have this whole faction of the online right that's embracing people like Nick Fuentes, embracing full-blown Nazism, and pretty much just co-opting wokeness, but in a totally inverted on an inverted scale, and I'm just like, yo, I don't
the
really want...
The pendulum's swinging the other way.
Yeah, but it's like, it'll just swing to the same direction with like a different narrative. Yeah, and so I'm just kind of like, do I really want to like do all that stuff for that to be the result? And so that's why I'm kind of like, maybe it's my time to be a grown up and just do podcasts.
Maybe it is. I mean, having a kid will definitely have that effect on your psyche when you start realizing that there's going to be a little person in the world that looks up to you and sees you as their male role model.
This is true, yeah. Yeah. And also, I feel as though if you're in a situation where like the New World Order is not affecting you as much as it was in the past, if at all, like maybe I accomplished a lot of those objectives.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the pushback against woke was something I think that was your primary avenue. That was your sector.
That was my sector. I was really good at it. I still am really good at it.
Have you still been doing it?
Not as much. I've been I've been a lot less active. You've been extremely active.
Yeah, I started doing a lot of documentary work and
I
more
love that.
serious stuff.
Yeah.
We were doing the Street Gonzo show over at Drinkin' Bros, and now we're off on our own channel on Street Gonzo, and having the autonomy to do pretty much whatever I want means that I don't have to, like when I was at Drinkin' Bros, I was, not that anybody was ever telling me what to do. I would never work for somebody that would tell me, what I couldn't say or something like that. But
yeah, you don't strike me as that type of person.
No, but what I mean is just the environment there and the show that we were cultivating when we were doing that first season of the show, which was like a flyer basically. It just had that chaotic, out of control energy, and I was I was still doing a lot of drugs and fooling around with loose women and stuff. And I think the culture that I was cultivating.
Wait. You stopped fooling around with loose women?
For kind of, yeah. I'm more focused, but no. I just mean that the show over there was just fucking out of control, and it was unsustainable. I was like developing physical ailments, like I was getting hypertension from taking so many amphetamines, and I wasn't sleeping, and I was getting all strung out, and I was exhausted, and I wasn't thinking straight, and I was just all over the place. Which I guess my whole life was kind of like that. But more recently, I think I've had some clarity in what direction I want to go in, and it's in making documentaries.
Yeah, so content creation, I feel as though it really is a race to the bottom. With the fact that you get rewarded by saying sensationalist stuff, and you get amplified.
I think that's going
by
away,
people
though. At
Really?
least in my experience. I think a lot of people are sick of the oversaturation of shock value content.
I'm one of them. I'm barely making any videos. Like, you're talking to, like, the poster child for it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like, when you were doing when you were trolling those city councils, that was shock value stuff, you know?
It was extreme shock value stuff. And then the protest content, total shock value stuff, all of it's shock value stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe I've just changed what I'm doing, so I'm not seeing it as much on my feed, but I think a lot of that stuff's kind of going by the wayside. But I could be totally wrong. I mean, your Instagram feed or your Twitter feed or whatever is sort of a reflection of what you're seeing in the world. So if you're seeing the world as this shocking, science experiment, you're going to see a bunch of stuff like that on your feed.
This is true. What made you want to start doing documentaries? Because I have, like, documentary filmmakers are people that I have so much respect. I think I have more respect for documentary filmmakers than I do any other creative person in any other creative avenue.
So we were doing the show. We were taking a break. We were going to try to take a break. And we ended up getting sent. Drinking Bros sent me and Joel out to L.A. to cover the fires.
Oh, wow, okay.
About a year ago now. And, yeah, man, we went out there and covered it, and we realized it was not a normal Street Gonzo episode. And we basically made a full-blown
Documentary.
featured documentary in like 2 weeks. And it was the best thing we ever did in terms of feedback and views and the feeling of satisfaction after being finished with it. So that was the first time I realized I wanted to start doing that more so. Joel's a filmmaker, and he was already interested in making films, so we just naturally went in that direction. And if you watch the show from when we started doing it, doing interviews on 6th Street here and going to strip clubs and fucking around, it kind of naturally started evolving more towards a documentation style is what we call it, like a documentation, like a time capsule of what we were experiencing. But yeah, that started kind of evolving after we went to Las Vegas. But it was still, the ethos of the show was still kind of out of control,
Yeah.
It was, we were just, I don't know, man. I just got over it.
No, I get it. Like, you do get a huge window into human emotions by going to these protests, even if it's as a troll. And you get a huge window of human emotions by just interviewing drunk people on 6th Street because shit just comes out.
Yeah, people will tell you sort of their
they'll tell you everything without you even asking. They'll just share everything.
I didn't really like doing protests ever, to be honest with you. They always were good content, but and somebody's got to cover them. And I felt like a lot of the times the news doesn't do a good job in general, but with protests specifically. At least the way we were trained in J school, it was kind of like, get 3 sort of key interviews, 3 sources, try to get differing opinions, but if you can't, just get the gist of what the different opinions are. And I don't know, when I go to protests, I try to interview like 40 people, or at least like 20, because there's so many people there. Why would you not interview as many as possible and then just jam them all together? You can still get the honest gist of what's going on.
My way of getting the honest gist of what's going on was by imitating the protesters.
Oh, dude, don't get me wrong. I think what you did was always pretty. You were doing like sort of miniature exposés because you're basically calling out anybody that's full of shit by acting like an exaggerated version of them.
Yeah.
I think it was what you did actually revealed a lot of truth in the world. But a lot of people do that kind of stuff and. And trolling the city councils, I always liked that you did that too because I don't really like any politicians.
No, I hate it. No matter what side you're on.
Yeah. Dude, I've actually kind of fallen more down that hole in terms of I used to have a little more libertarian and conservative values, and now I just think it's all bullshit.
Yeah, my whole view is I've actually been a lot happier this year just because I stopped getting worked up over politics. And for a while I was just very much checked out. I saw your documentary on Puerto Rico though, and it was probably one of the most eye-opening films I've ever seen, and it shows that like, hey man, no matter how checked out you are, like sometimes a film in an area that you don't feel any real connection towards, it does serve as a microcosm for where society at large is headed, and where your life could be headed if you don't stay somewhat vigilant and somewhat attentive to current events.
So, dude, I've been on sort of a podcast circuit this week promoting this documentary, right?
Yes.
So I've been, at a certain point you start repeating yourself a little bit. I'm curious what you thought of it. What were your takeaways from it?
My general takeaway is that based on the documentary, you're in an area where nothing works. People are paying inflated prices for services that do not work. Birth rates are plummeting, and the money that people are paying for essential services are just being siphoned out to billionaires on Wall Street who are influence peddling the government to get no-bid contracts, which which helped bankrupt the population, fail to provide services, and just literally just take money out from, just basically loot the country. And you're seeing things like this happen in a lot of major cities across America. And if you're not careful, this could bleed to the small towns. I think that a lot of these cities are beyond reproach. But with that being said, I do think that there's going to be a renaissance in small towns, like in small towns that neighbor the big cities, because people are going to start building things out in those areas. And in order for that to be sustainable and to work long term, like for multiple generations, people have to watch these movies and be aware of this so that they can never let that stuff happen in those areas.
Yeah, I think that what's happening in Puerto Rico is a microcosm of what's going on in the United States as a whole. And you could use the example of our government officials extracting our tax money and shipping it overseas to Israel or Ukraine as it's the same thing that's happening in Puerto Rico. They're extracting resources and wealth and moving it to in the example of Puerto Rico, it'd be an off-island location.
Well, it's the consulting firms in New York. It's like, hey, we got to pay these consultants, but if the consultant's a shell company for your homeboy in New York, or it's another LLC you own, or it's a DBA that you have,
right.
And so you're literally just looting the treasury. I think that people, I think with the foreign aid stuff, like, it's very easy to like unilaterally blame Ukraine and more specifically Israel for what's happening. But what really happens is it just gets outsourced to consultants, and it doesn't even go to the foreign countries. It's just outsourced to consultants in America. It's for Wall Street billionaires to just have more money on Wall Street.
I don't know about that. The consultants and the law firms are just they're vessels that funnel and siphon funds for the people that are really in control of them.
Yeah.
Like you said, Wall Street billionaires.
Yeah.
There are people that are, in Ukraine that were funneling money. That are keeping that money.
Well, the Ukraine thing is obvious.
There was just
it's
a
obvious
massive
money.
energy.
It's obvious money.
There was just a
laundering.
massive energy corruption scheme there with their nuclear power, I believe it was. It happens all the time. Israel sucks money out of the United States. Ukraine sucks money out of the United States. Qatar sucks money out of the United States.
Every country does suck.
Yeah,
money.
and it's the same thing that's going on in Puerto Rico. Wall Street, New York, let's say, is sucking money out of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And then what happens is they have a declining birth rate on top of that, and they have this inverted population pyramid, and they're not able to fund their own public programs like the electrical grid, like the power, or like the water, like pensions, social security.
And you're building industrial parks in areas where you should be able to fish and farm and do all types of stuff.
It's
so you're not able to have
polluted,
real food.
man.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Apparently, you can't even drink raw milk there.
Well, that's in 1987. There was the intrastate ban of raw milk, sale of raw milk happened federally in the United States. So there's like 26 or 27 states where it's completely illegal to basically purchase raw milk. Isn't that crazy? It's because of Rockefeller.
But you can smuggle fucking human beings from south of the border, and God knows where, and nothing happens to you.
Well, I mean,
that's another discussion, though.
That's
another topic.
That's if you're connected and you're operating in certain circles. But no, the raw milk thing is bizarre. And you know why that happened?
I know the gist of it is that J.D. Rockefeller was funded a lot of pasteurization research, and somehow the pasteurization research or pasteurization has an effect on the bottom line of this U.S. Standard Oil Company. I never understood how or why, though. So if you want to elaborate.
So basically, you got the gist of it down. He used his connections at the University of Chicago to push lobby against raw milk, more or less. And how history would say it is that he was in favor of pasteurization but really he was just against raw milk. And the reason he was in favor of pasteurization was because he wanted to basically price out the small farmers from being able to sell milk because they couldn't afford the pasteurization equipment. And the whole reason it happened was because of this swill milk scandal. In the urban environment these cows were living in were filthy, and they started producing bluish, like watery milk that was called swill milk, and it was killing infants.
Yeah.
But I don't think the problem was ever actually raw milk. It was the actual sanitary conditions that the cows were living in and that the milk was being
produced
stored
under.
in.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But that all goes into the whole other. I don't even want to call it a conspiracy. Just the fact that Rockefeller had a huge effect on the pharmaceutical industry, like the FDA.
Yeah.
That was an expansion. That was the natural evolution of the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906, and the reason that he wanted to do that was because he wanted medicine, pharmaceuticals, to basically be petroleum derived, because then he would make more money because he had a monopoly on the oil industry.
Yeah.
It's the same shit, you know.
Although I never understood how you use oil to make and petroleum to make medicine.
I don't know the science.
I never understood that, but that does make sense. And
I mean, dude, think about this. That can and this can both have a plastic liner on the inside of it. A lot of shit we have is made out of plastic. That bag's made out of plastic. Some of our clothes are made out of plastic. That's all derived from petroleum, too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How does it work? I have no fucking idea. But it does.
But yeah, using petroleum, you use petroleum to literally make everything.
Yeah. I really everything.
Yeah.
And that's largely because of Rockefeller. You know that back in the day he invested in a company that ripped up the tram lines across the United States?
Yes, a lot of the cars we used to have rail systems all over America.
Yeah.
Now we don't in many major cities.
That's a travesty.
It is a travesty. And now people are trying
the infrastructure was already there, and the fucking guy.
Well, cars used to be ethanol powered too.
Oh, dude. Yeah. People think that things have always been this way, and they haven't.
Yeah. But it's funny, though, because the climate, like, what we're saying right now is very much in line with a lot of what the climate crowd would agree with you on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why when I say that my politics have, I mean, I guess I've never really abided by a political party, but, you know, now my political ideology has pretty dramatically shifted because I think capitalism and communism are pretty similar.
No, I want to hear this explanation.
Well, they're both basically controlled by a central power.
Well, real capitalism is decentralized.
It doesn't
what we have
exist,
right now,
though.
what we have now is not capitalism.
Yeah, but that's the same argument that communists make. They're like, but we've never had real communism. Have we ever had real capitalism? Probably not. I mean, the idea of capitalism is great.
We had it in like the 1700s, and we had it at our country's first inception. We had it up until about the Gilded Age.
Yeah,
and
but
then people like Rockefeller wound up creating these mega monopolies, and Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie,
Right.
all these people helped lobby to create the Federal Reserve and the central bank. And once you get central banking, that's when the
Stranger. So, what I'm saying is, that's the natural evolution of capitalism. It's the same thing as communism. They both basically centralize power.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Well, no, there is now. You have Bitcoin, and you have parallel economies, and you have a lot. And
you think that's going to last? Serious
yes.
question. I don't have an opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about cryptocurrency to have an opinion.
I think a lot of these other crypto coins are a scam. Pretty much everything that's not Bitcoin is a scam. But yes, Bitcoin is going to be around forever. It's going to be used as money forever. It's going to take 140 years for the last block to be produced. Within a 140-year period, a lot can change in 140 years. And when you use a better monetary system that has a fixed supply that gets harder to produce every 4 years, yes, it'll completely change and revolutionize society and how we prioritize things. And
so you don't think there's going to be a way that the government will be able to centralize that, or monopoly men, or whoever?
Yes, people are always going to try, but I'm saying that if you have because of something like Bitcoin, you as an individual have the ability to decentralize your life. You still have that ability. The concern that we're dealing with is that most people don't want. Most people do not want that.
We had that with cash, though.
Yes, but cash and our dollars can be easily debased because they're not backed by anything.
Yeah,
Bitcoin,
that's true.
Bitcoin is backed by energy.
I guess I don't know enough about monetary systems to really have a strong opinion on this.
I understand,
but
we're not like.
I'm just questioning what you're saying for the purpose of questioning. I mean, that's my job, dude.
No, you're supposed to. I think that a lot of what the Trump administration is doing with Bitcoin is they're trying to use it as a centralization tool. By like being in cahoots with like Coinbase and Binance and having the same privacy draconian privacy laws that Biden was trying to float out. There was a guy named Keon Rodriguez who made a mixer called Samurai Wallet, where basically like if you want to send money, you pool your funds with other people's funds, and it gets kind of mixed in a bag, and it gets sent to another wallet. So like it kind of makes
Isn't
it so
that
that
just
you're
what a bank is?
No. It's different, though, because, like, if you withdraw money from a bank or I send it to somebody, there's a record of, like, oh, you sent it from this account, right? Or that wallet came from your account, and there's like, a paper trail, right?
But
Whereas if you're...
Isn't that how a bank works, though? They hold everybody's money, and then it's all traced through a paper trail?
Well, no, because with these mixers, everybody pools their funds into the mixer. And then when you get the money back, you could get it from you can get it from a wallet that you can get it from you'll get that money received from a totally different wallet from when you send it.
And they won't know
Yeah,
that
so
it was your. That
yeah.
They don't know that you have that money.
It's a lot harder to trace.
Okay.
It becomes a lot, and it's not like about like avoiding the government or anything like that. It's just more like
I
avoiding.
think it is.
No, I don't think so. Here's what I think, and I want to go back to Puerto Rico, but I think that it's really more about avoiding scammers on the internet. It's about avoiding social engineering. It's about avoiding criminals and terrorists getting access to your data. And if your funds are private without these KYC provisions, you are a lot safer from cyber attacks, from hacks, from phishing, from people knowing how much what your net worth is from robbers. So that's
digitally as fiat currency was. Like they said, the banks were safer because they'd have a security guard protecting the money so it wouldn't get stolen. I think that the reason crypto is important is because you can hide your money from the government. I don't think the government should have much of a say in the average private citizen's finances.
I agree. Financial privacy.
But when there's a billionaire
separate
that's
money from
controlling
state, yeah.
everything with their massive share of the wealth, then maybe at a certain point somebody should have intervened. I don't know, man. That's where I'm at politically. That's what I mean. That my political ideology has been. I just don't give a shit. They're all fucking full of shit, dude.
Well, they are completely full of shit.
You know what I mean, Tom? It's bullshit, man.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting here talking about this while they're like, ha, these fools. They're speaking on things that they don't even know what we're doing behind this curtain.
But you know
what's
what,
behind door number one?
Hey, but Gary.
Epstein, trafficking children to an island.
But Gary, here's
the Mossad, the CIA, all these
MI6,
people doing all this
people.
fucked up shit. And
yes, but also we're talking
what
about
are you going to do?
Gary.
Get shot in the neck. Go on.
But we're talking about it. But what we're talking about.
Well, we can.
No, we'll
Look
always
at Europe, dude.
Yeah, well, you know what? We're not Europe, and you know what? Thanks to protocols like Nostr, where it's public-private key, where you can communicate. Thanks to the fact that you have money in existence that cannot be frozen or manipulated by a government, your ability to actually have free speech and express yourself and have these conversations. It gives this a lot more staying. It gives us a lot more staying power.
Talk to Puerto Ricans about that, dude.
Yeah, but how widespread is Bitcoin adoption in Puerto Rico?
No, I'm saying talk to Puerto Ricans about free speech. You know.
Oh yeah,
they have it, but they're some of them are scared to even talk about the corruption down there because there's fear of retaliation.
Like what kind of retaliation?
Well, there's been people that have died down there. Speaking of crypto, there was a guy, Nikolai Meshegian. He was found dead. He tweeted about a joint Mossad-CIA sex trafficking operation on the island, and 4 hours later, he was found drowned.
This is true. But maybe he, there's a couple of other alternative philosophies, right? Maybe somebody, maybe the person who drowned him tweeted that out on his phone so he could create a false lead before they killed him. So somebody could talk about that. So it's like, hey, look at door number 1 where the evidence is behind door number 3. So that's.
You think it's a conspiracy inception?
I'm just saying, like, it's a possibility. Another thing is that you may have been tweeting that, and maybe you got killed or something happened for something totally different. You don't really know the full inner workings of this person's life. It's just one thing to be suspicious of.
Well,
but generally speaking, it could be something entirely different.
All right, I got another one for you.
Okay, sure.
Maurice Spagnoletti, New Jersey banker, went down to Puerto Rico to investigate embezzlement at Doral Bank, shot 9 times. What happened to that guy? I'm just saying, dude.
Well, yes,
a rhetorical
I think
question.
that's a lot more. I think
my point was that.
But that theory is a lot more credible than the first one.
My point
that's
is
what I'm saying.
My point was that there's a lot of dead bodies connected to corruption in Puerto Rico, so people are scared to talk about it. That's all I'm getting at.
I agree. Do you think making Puerto Rico a state would make it better or worse?
I actually don't know. All I know about Puerto Rico is that Obama created the financial board down there, which essentially acts as a shadow government that has at this point siphoned about $2 billion from the Puerto Rican taxpayers while delaying $13 billion in FEMA funds. Actually, that number's probably higher. From preventing those FEMA funds from fixing the power grid, and they don't have sovereignty. And people do talk about it. I'm not saying all the Puerto Ricans are living in complete fear, but a lot of them don't want to talk specifics. They'll speak in generalities and platitudes like, our government's not listening to us. We're being colonized. But then when you start naming names of who's siphoning this money away, like Robert Mujica, the executive director of the board, or Arthur J. Gonzalez, one of the chairs, or any number of the members of the board, and then you talk about the law firms that they're siphoning that money to, like Proskauer Rose and McKinsey and Company, which are two of the most powerful companies on earth. When you start talking about that kind of stuff, people are like, whoa, maybe you should be careful what you're talking about.
And this is all allegedly speaking so that neither of us gets sued for having an honest discussion to try to help fix the widespread corruption existing in Puerto Rico so that the people there can actually have clean water and fully functioning electricity so
education
that,
and medical. It's really fucked up, dude. Did you watch the whole thing?
I watched 90% of it.
What'd you think about what was the part that
I mean,
stood out
people
most
could
to you?
there's little kids that are probably dying of diseases that could easily be cured because the power runs out at the hospital, and now all of a sudden you can't get vitamins or minerals or nutrients, or the doctor can't perform surgery that's ultra essential, and that contributes even more to the population crisis.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of industrial pollutants and mercury and stuff that's caused cancer and Parkinson's and a number of other things.
Oh, and let's not forget the infertility stuff.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that blew my mind. So they tested birth control on Puerto Rican women in the 50s as part of a larger government initiative called La Operación, and they were giving these women 10 times, at certain points, 10 times the amount of birth control they were supposed to, and it actually there's 3 potential deaths linked to it, and none of that was ever investigated, and by 1982, a third of the women in Puerto Rico were actually completely sterilized, and now they're suffering from a declining birth rate.
What was the purpose of why they even conducted these experiments?
I think they were trying to thin the population because the women down there were having so many children, and there was a larger Puerto Rican U.S. economic initiative called Operation Bootstrap, which was aimed at modernizing the economy from an agriculture-based economy to an industrialized manufacturing and tourism economy. And when the economy shifts like that, you get people moving from the rural areas because there's not as much economic opportunity to the urban areas, and then the population density shoots up, and they wanted to control. It was population control is what it was.
It makes sense.
So they didn't want it to be overpopulated because they wouldn't be able to feed people and pay everybody and whatever. I think what they were doing essentially was, I think at the time they were trying to control the population so that they could have these manufacturing centers and use Puerto Rico as sort of, I don't know if wage slavery is the right thing, but they were trying to use it as like cheap labor. And now I think they're trying to push people off the island so they can basically take the island for themselves and make money off of tourism.
Who's they?
These Wall Street, the people at these Wall Street bankers.
So how would they do that? Would they just buy the island and say this island is now owned by this consulting company?
I wonder if they could do that.
Like, how would that work?
You think Wall Street's trying to buy Puerto Rico? Maybe they are.
No, but you know what could happen, right? Is it could just be, hey, let's all pool our money together, lobby the government, get these no-bid contracts. So you'll still have a government with a Senate, with like a president, with all this other stuff, but everything just
to make money.
Yeah, every resource just winds up being controlled and operated by these shadowy figures on Wall Street. That's what I think, and it's one of those things where it's like, hey guys, we got to tax. Hey, let's tax the billionaires, but then the tax money is going towards a foundation you know, or a government contract that's getting you know, in which Microsoft or Apple is getting the government contract.
So they're on the surface, they're extracting resources and wealth to these shadowy figures, as you said, which you said it perfectly. The financial board that controls the island, they control all of the money. They're a shadow government, essentially. And they can supersede the law, you know, even if something's written into legislation, since they can approve budgets over $10 million and they basically monitor and regulate all of the money on the island. They can do whatever they want. But I think there's something more insidious at play. I just get that feeling, and I guess I haven't really figured that part out, but what is absolutely happening is that this board, this shadow government, has siphoned off $2 billion to Wall Street. That's the surface level, but you got to dig deeper because it just doesn't add up. Money, you follow the money, you're going to find who's behind it, but there always seems to be a long-term play. I mean, those people aren't just doing things short-term to make money. They've controlled things for, you know, decades and decades.
For sure. Well, how did you find your subjects? Because it would seem like, based on what you're saying, I feel as though a lot of people would be very reluctant to talk about this stuff in a documentary setting, knowing what could happen to people who start speaking out and being critical.
Yeah. So basically, I got connected with this guy, David Frontera, and he is very well connected on the island. He's a community guy. He runs a Bible study, and he linked me up with some other people that run nonprofits, and it just sort of organically happened that way. But what's funny is that the people that I was linked up with and connected to, they were willing to talk about this stuff, but a lot of the random, you know, everyday run-of-the-mill people were sort of, they were much more hesitant. A lot of them didn't want to talk about it, and I don't blame them because, you know, you can be killed or jailed or sued, like you said, and
you can have stuff happen to family members. Yeah.
If you don't, especially if you have a family, but if you don't think that you have the potential to actually enact change, and the risk is this high, and the reward is like, man, maybe something will change, but probably not. Why would you take that risk? It seems like a very risky, ballsy thing to do, and I didn't even realize exactly what I was stepping into when we were down there, to be honest with you. I didn't realize how much of a big of a bite of the shit sandwich we took until we were talking to this guy,
How long did it take you
Oxy.
to film?
We were there for a week.
Yeah. Dude, you got a lot done in a week.
Oh, dude, that's what we do.
You got a lot. That's really impressive. People spend months in these places to try to get what you do.
Yeah, I mean, but, you know, not to sound like a arrogant asshole, but nobody really does things the way I do it. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm not saying I do it the right way,
you have one speed,
or the most efficient
Gary,
way.
I've known you for a long time.
We definitely do pick a target and we go after it.
You have one speed and it's go.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. That's just, my mind is still blown at some of this stuff. Did anybody ever try to like fuck with you or physically intimidate you, or did cops mess with you or threaten to arrest you or anything like that while you were on the island?
No, we didn't deal with the police at all, and we didn't really have any issues with anyone. Everybody was super friendly and welcoming, and they were willing to talk about it. Pretty much everybody was willing to talk about this stuff off camera, like specifically the stuff with the energy company Luma.
No, for sure.
People were, you know.
But just because, like, let's say somebody who is connected, who is an insider in you know, and deals directly with Luma and has these contracts, like, what if somebody like that overheard you? Nobody overheard you or anything like that?
They wouldn't talk to us. I actually
no,
have
but
a
somebody
buddy
could overhear you and
whose
say,
uncle
"Hey,
works
we
for
should."
Luma, and he was saying that I should be careful.
Yeah.
That I should be careful with where I stick my nose. But like these companies like Luma, they control the transition and distribution of power, and they're the ones that were like Luma was. It's a Canadian-American joint energy venture. It was created with the specific intent to basically fix the power grid, and they haven't done that. So people are pretty fed up with Luma, and they were pretty vocal about that. But what I'm saying is that when you start talking about the specifics of the people behind all this stuff, that's when people get a little, you know, antsy about it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Because those are the people that, you know, they have unlimited power, dude. They're lawyers. They're consulting firms.
Yeah.
They can fucking they can kill somebody and get away with it theoretically, allegedly.
What's the social media environment like in Puerto Rico regarding that?
People talk about it a lot, but it largely remains on the island, I think, because of the language barrier.
No, I mean the social media on the island. Just we're talking about on the island, like, because remember during COVID, everybody was a lot of people were very loudly critical of the COVID scam, and rightfully so. And then you had our government and the tech companies colluding with each other to deliberately silence the criticism and pretty much stop free speech from circulating. And you saw, almost this American experiment almost fail spectacularly because of it. I was wondering if, like, that's similar in Puerto Rico. I was wondering if that's, like, similar, in Puerto Rico regarding that. Like they start flagging shit. Oh, it's misinformation. It's disinformation. Take this post down. Or, like,
there's been theories that the local news and the media outlets in Puerto Rico have been censoring information like this for decades because they're paid off by government officials or probably threatened as well. But I didn't look into the validity of that yet. That's a deep dive for another day.
That's for another, yeah.
But I mean, I think for the most part, people that talk about it on social media, a lot of them don't have a big voice, and there are people that do, and people do talk about it. But I think the reason it's not a bigger story than what it is because the island's relatively small. It's got 3.8 million people, I think. And it might even be smaller.
People would rather focus on Tony Hinchcliffe than on the actual bigger underlying problems in that island.
Well, maybe, but more so that there's like I was saying, there's this language barrier.
Yeah.
It's all in Spanish. So on the who would care about Puerto Rico outside of the island of Puerto Rico?
Who would care about Puerto Rico?
Mainland America.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And 78% of mainland America only speaks
So
English.
what made you just say, hey, let's do Puerto Rico?
I saw a tweet from Laura Loomer. Seriously. I saw it, and it was basically I was looking at some of the numbers that she was posting about one of these lawyers, David Brownstein, and how much he was getting paid. And it really reminded me of how a lot of our tax money is being extracted for foreign aid and how we're getting the shit end of the stick with our money. And I think that Puerto Rico is suffering from the same thing except at a worse degree. And if it's being done in Puerto Rico, it's being done here. And I think that also
Puerto Rico's like a testing ground.
Yeah, and if it is a testing ground, then everything happening down there is going to happen here, in 10 or 20 years. I think it's going to get worse here with that. I think our money's just going to keep getting sent overseas. It fucking sucks.
Well, there's a currency on the internet that kind of fixes this.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew more about crypto. They should start teaching that shit in school.
Or just start stacking.
Or really, I guess people should just start paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Just
start fucking stacking.
You can teach yourself all that stuff.
Yeah, I think buying Bitcoin during COVID was the best decision I ever made.
Dude, you know how many people I know that bought Bitcoin during COVID or before COVID and just are rich now, basically? It's crazy.
I'm not rich. I'm middle class, but yes, it's.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's fucking crazy what's happening. It's totally insane, and you're seeing this in big cities too. Declining birth rates.
That's what I'm saying, man. Everything that's going on down there is happening here.
Law enforcement doesn't law enforcement. You got rampant homelessness everywhere. It's all a byproduct of big cities.
Yeah, you said law enforcement doesn't enforce the law.
Yeah, they don't law enforce.
That's funny because, well, it's not funny at all, actually. When we were down there, the day after we landed, this little girl, this teenage girl, 16-year-old girl, was stabbed to death by a group of high school chicks and one of their mothers. And they held that girl's mother down and made her basically watch her daughter get murdered. And we stumbled upon it while we were traveling the island, the area where she was killed. And the police at the time, it had been a couple days since the murder, and everybody knew who it was, and the police hadn't even arrested the girl. I mean, they did it. They did a couple days later, but it seemed like if they knew it was her and they had all the evidence and all these eyewitnesses, why weren't they arrested? Like, if that happened in the U.S., the person that would be responsible would be arrested immediately.
Well, depending on where in the U.S.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
In Austin or in San Francisco or in D.C., it's going to take some time.
I don't know. I think Austin does a pretty good job, but somewhere like fucking Portland or something, I feel like people get away with all sorts of crazy shit in those places.
Did you hear about?
I should go there next.
Did you hear about the guy that got stabbed? Did you hear about that little stabbing that occurred in Portland?
The
and you're
black
gonna
guy?
say yes.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
That's insane. That's horrible. The black dude stabbed a white guy, and then the white guy called him the N-word, and then
After getting stabbed.
yeah, and then they let him go. Well, it shouldn't matter if it was before or after. Language isn't a reason to kill somebody.
Yes, but you know that the guy who got I don't know if he got killed. He didn't get killed. He just got stabbed, right? But
Well-
the guy who got stabbed was a convicted pedophile, right?
Well, that changes things.
A lot, right? Yo,
I guess it does. Maybe I'm not as principled as I thought I was. I mean, I think that I don't know, man.
no, I mean, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, these right-wing fucking influencers get caught up on, like, they fixate on one thing without, like, bothering to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is this guy was a pedophile, homeless in downtown Portland with a rap sheet. The guy who killed him also had a rap sheet. Both these people were through the system. When you live in a town like Portland, I wouldn't put it past the homeless population to kind of know about other homeless people.
That's a good point, because there was
Do you understand? You understand where this is going, right?
there was a homeless guy shitting on the fucking middle school
Yeah,
fence
you
over by my
documented
house.
this,
You
yes,
remember that?
yeah,
My
yeah.
Instagram account got temporarily suspended for that, but this
Yeah,
homeless
wild.
guy was shitting on a middle school fence in broad daylight, and nobody was doing anything about it. So I stopped my truck and I yelled at him, and I was like, "Dude, pull your pants up, get the fuck out of here." And I went back and was talking to one of the homeless people that was panhandling at the light.
Yeah.
And they told me that guy's like a fucking sexual predator.
The guy who shot, I wish you got that on video.
Which part?
About the guy being a sexual predator. I wish you got
Oh,
that
yeah,
conversation
yeah.
on video. Yeah, so that's the bigger problem. And the problem is that when you enable homelessness like it's being enabled in places like Austin or Portland or San Francisco or New York or Washington D.C. or any of these, or Chicago, or any of these major urban cities, you have convicted pedophiles that are roaming around free, breaking all types of conditions of their release. And because of rampant homelessness, now you got pedophiles camping out by middle schools and elementary schools.
Yeah, but also it's
That's
the,
a big- that's
the
a way-
double-edged sword of
Gary,
the
sorry.
vigilante homeless justice. Like what you were saying. This homeless guy in Portland stabbed the pedophile. It's there's the good with the bad, because your average person who has something to lose isn't going to go stab a pedophile in the face or whatever.
Yo, but
a
the point-
homeless person might.
No, but the point is, these right-wingers are like so focused on dropping N-bombs and like anti-white racism and all this other bullshit, and they just totally miss out on the fact that, like, wait, why are pedophiles walking around totally freely in places like Portland, Austin, San Francisco, Los Angeles, et cetera, with no consequences when there are kids in those areas who go to school in those elementary schools?
What's
That's
that got to
way-
do with right wingers though?
Because every right winger I see on X is super focused on the guy saying a word and getting acquitted over this way bigger picture of you got pedophile because of these lax homeless policies. You got pedophiles just walking around elementary schools with no consequences.
Yeah, but I don't. This story wasn't about that guy being a pedophile. People didn't know that. If people would have known he was a pedophile, I think maybe it'd be a different story.
That's what I'm trying to say, though, is that it doesn't get like
Yeah, but that's
these
got
media
nothing to
figures
do
aren't
with
even bringing up the fact that he's a pedophile.
because it wasn't about a guy committing an act of pedophilia.
I know, but it's still it still highlights a bigger problem. Is what I'm saying.
I don't think there's a connection between right wingers and people not. I don't think anybody knew that guy was a pedophile. I'm not a right winger, and I didn't know that.
I knew he was a pedophile. It was like it's simple. It was like right there in the report that it was in the news. Even the news wrote that both of them had lengthy rap sheets. The guy got stabbed, went to prison for sexually assaulting a child in like the 1990s. It was right there in front of it's right there in front of you.
Yeah, but I think that's
The point
sort
is
of the result of poor reporting. Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, the
the-
local news did it, but the people on social media. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe that they did overlook it, but I mean, I saw a ton of stuff about that online that wasn't from right wing sources, and nobody said that it was a pedophile.
I just think that the greater point is that enabling homelessness and enabling vagrancy is a huge problem, and that's a big deal that needs to be fixed. Like,
well,
now.
yeah,
That's kind of like where I'm at with this.
Yeah, that I would totally
That's
agree with
literally
that.
what that's kind of the long-winded gist of what I was trying to say. You went to Dearborn.
Yeah, we went up there and we infiltrated some mosques and
I mean, you clearly look like you blend
staked
in.
out a building.
Yeah.
Ended up breaking in and found some weird shit in there.
Why, you want to share?
No, I've been
You
told
already said that you
to
broke.
keep that to keep that under wraps.
You already literally admitted that you broke into a building, so you know.
No, I'm saying I don't want to say what we found in there.
Oh.
It's a little cock tease for the documentary.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. I can't wait for that to come out. That'll be fun.
Yeah, give it like 2 or 3 weeks. We're in the middle of editing it. I'm still putting.
So how did you
out
when you were in
content.
Dearborn? What was your vibe from that city?
The news exacerbates all that stuff. There's no Sharia law, but there seems to be there have been some terror plots that were foiled up there, and maybe an assimilation problem. But at the same time, there was a mixed bag. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around what I think about all that because I gotta, man, you know what I should do? I gotta go watch all the footage through again because we talked to a lot of people and we got a pretty intimate, non-controversial perspective of the city. A lot of the stuff that you see online, and this I would say is because of right-wingers, people like Jake Lang. They go
that
up
guy
there.
Sucks.
They go up there and they just
deliberately start shit for engagement and viewing, and like we talked about earlier, people are sick of the sensationalist content just for sensationalist content.
Yeah.
But, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine, man. That's exactly what happens. And there's not a lot of people that are having what I would consider a real conversation with any of those people. I've not seen anything like that.
I
think we got a pretty unique perspective.
From what I've seen, the only time from what I've seen in these videos, the only time I saw any of the Muslim protesters get violent or angry was when they were deliberately provoked by people like Jake Lang.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I gathered.
I'm so sick of seeing that kind of content. I haven't watched all the protest footage and stuff, but I mean, I also think that if somebody comes to your town from out of town to stir shit up and they're having a protest, that's technically their right to do that. But I'm also not totally against, violence per se. Like if somebody came to Austin that was from fucking, I don't know, like if a group of Indians came here and started marching in the streets and saying they didn't like the way we did things,
you'd be
and
pissed.
somebody
you have every right to
stopped
be,
one of them in the face, I wouldn't really care.
No, for
so I
sure.
can't blame them for that. But
I think that it's one.
I don't know. I
think
that's what I'm saying. I don't really have my mind wrapped around all this.
But you know what's interesting is though people were rightfully angry about guys from people from other parts of the country or other cities coming to Austin to riot for BLM. And then meanwhile, you got a bunch of white Christians going to Dearborn, Michigan to protest against what's happening in Michigan when they don't live in that area. So I just feel like a lot of it, I can empathize with why the people who live there would be annoyed by the protesters. But that being said, from watching these people talk when they were talking normally, they were like, yo, man, when we say Allah Akbar, it just means God is great. We just love God. We're cool. We like everybody. They just seem like people I would hang out with. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of holdover from 9/11 propaganda that has skewed people's opinions. I will say that the mayor up there is an asshole, yelling at people that live there for asking questions about why street signs are put up, whether you agree with the street sign being put up or not, is, the mayor
in Arabic
literally
or something?
told this guy that lived there he's going to throw a parade when that guy moves out of town.
Jesus, that's fucking wild. But seeing street signs in foreign languages is not uncommon. If you go to Brighton Beach or if you go to Coney Island in certain parts of Brooklyn, there's a lot of signs in Russian in those areas.
It wasn't because of it being in Arabic.
Okay.
It was the guy that the sign's named after, Osama Siblani. He's the creator of the Arab American News, and he's lived up there since 1976, I think.
Yeah.
But he was a Hamas and Hezbollah sympathizer, and people had a problem with that.
Yeah,
which
is
depending
justifiable.
On your
Yeah, you
position
shouldn't be putting statues and eulogizing terrorists. That's not a good look.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what I was about to say is, depending on your position, you could say that they're freedom fighters or they're terrorists. And if your family, we interviewed a Palestinian Christian up there who had a family member that was blown away by the IDF. I mean, if the IDF kills one of your family members and then Hamas has your back, are those terrorists to you?
Yeah, but they're not really having your back. They're exploiting your anger to centralize and have power over a region.
I know.
So
that's very easy to say from a third party perspective. But when you're living there and you see your family members' guts all over the place. I think it'd be a lot easier to be exploited, like you said.
It's a lot easier to be
not as
It's a lot easier to
clear-cut
be
as
exploited, but
what-
you're still being exploited.
It's not as clear cut as what people want it to be. And that's what the news tries to make things be. They try to make it binary and say, this is what's going on. Muslims are bad and the Christians are scared, which, for the record, a lot of the people we did talk to up there are kind of scared to talk about this kind of stuff that are not Muslim. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all the Muslim people are. I think what happens is the news divides people up because they have a vested interest in a bottom line, and getting clicks makes them money and makes their advertisers and their owners happy. And when they divide people, the Christians and the Muslims are basically scared to communicate with each other about what's going on. That's really what's happening.
And what you said about the news, social media is turning into that on steroids.
It's always been
Yeah.
that. That's always been what it is.
It's turning into that on steroids. It's freaking.
You know, that's why when I say I don't have my mind wrapped around this stuff, it's because I don't think the digging into the minutia of these things it's so complex, and it's not something that I have any real experience with. Like, I'm not from the Middle East. I've never really talked to very many Muslims, and I'm not a theologian. So what is my opinion? Like, when you ask me about that, what's the point of even hearing my opinion? All I'm giving you is my 2 cents from a blue collar guy from Ohio. You know?
I think that you're.
I don't fucking know. What I do know is that it's not what the news says it is, and I think that's a large part of what I do is basically show people what's actually going on, and then they can make their mind up for themselves.
Gary, do you eat bacon?
Yes.
Okay, so as somebody who eats bacon, I think that your viewpoint on what's going on in the Middle East is the viewpoint that every American who eats bacon should have, because it does not affect, because it has no effect on you.
Say that again?
I think that your viewpoint about what's happening in the Middle East is the viewpoint that I think every single American who doesn't have any direct stake in these conflicts in the Middle East, that should be the mainstream viewpoint of every single American who does not have a direct stake in whatever conflict is going on. I think a lot of people try to speak on stuff that they don't really understand. I think a lot of people get there's a lot of outrage for the Palestinians that are people, and these are people who are have no connection. They're not Muslims, they're not Jews, they're not they don't know anybody that's lived in that region, and then they come in and they go to these protests and they have the loudest voices, and they're the most opinionated, and they are the loudest voices about a cause that they're just not even all that familiar with. And what I like about you is that everyone says America first, this and this and that, right? But you actually go and film documentaries and go to places where you're legitimately highlighting problems that are happening in America. And I just think that more journalists should be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, journalists should. Yeah. I don't know if the average American
and more commentators should be focused on those issues.
I don't know if the average American should necessarily just not have an opinion, though, because that's sort of pacifying the population. No, you're not allowed to have an opinion because you don't have a stake in this.
I didn't say you're not allowed to. I just think that
I'm in a unique position.
I just think that your view is the correct viewpoint, because you're openly admitting, hey man,
as a journalist,
yes,
yes,
but as a human, from what you're saying, I think that your view about this is I think the correct viewpoint. It's it just shows humility.
I don't think there is a correct viewpoint. That's
it's
my
a viewpoint that I agree with.
That's my whole point. Is
what I'm saying is that I agree with. I like your viewpoint. That's what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that the people are worried about what's going on in places like Dearborn or Epic City in Texas or in Minnesota because they're seeing what's happening in Europe.
Oh, then that's fair. And that's perfectly fair and valid to have that.
And the reason that I'm saying that I'm not an expert on this is because, from a journalistic standpoint, as a reporter that is going in and showing you everything that's happening, I've only experienced on a surface level what's going on in Dearborn for 5 days. If I had done a ton of research about this, I could give you a more nuanced opinion. I can't really. I don't want to make an ass of myself and have and say, oh well, this is exactly what's happening. All I know for sure is what's happening is that it's really not what the news is making it out to be. That doesn't mean that there's not a problem though, and the fact that people are concerned about. We interviewed this one kid who was worried about what's happening to his hometown. He grew up there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kid has a reason to feel that way if it's changing into something that he doesn't like.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. And I wasn't talking about migration into areas. I was just talking about the overall issues that are happening way across the pond in those regions. That's what I was referring to. Just for context and clarification.
Yeah, it's a complex issue.
Very much, yeah.
That's why I don't like getting bogged down in the minutia of stuff, because I don't really have an expert opinion on it.
Yeah.
I can just tell you what we saw.
No, and that's what I was trying to say, is that I think that, like, admitting when you don't have an expert opinion or admitting when there's something you don't know is something that I think more people in the creative media should have that trait.
Yeah,
that's
but
what
that
I'm
doesn't
saying.
make them money, you know?
It doesn't make people money, I know. Because it's all about content, it's all about clicks, and it's all about, like, it's sadly becoming a race to the bottom with all this stuff.
I think it's been a race to the bottom for years, and I think, well, in a certain capacity, but I do, like, what we were talking about originally, I think the shock value content, maybe it's not going away, man. I don't know. Because obviously that dude, Jake Lang, he got a lot of clicks just going up there and
just starting shit like an
Yeah.
It's not a good look. I think people are getting. I do think people are getting sick of this. And me and Dan talked about this when we had our podcast. And when Elon's like, "Oh yeah, you guys are the new media," and he's like, "Yeah, you are. Congratulations, good job. You've literally turned into these exact same people."
Yeah, I mean, you're right, dude. A lot of the old corporate institutional media now has holdings in alternative independent media.
Yeah.
They control some of that shit.
David Icke
They
said
own
mainstream alternative media, and it's really sad to see how worked up. I think it's good to there's always a balance. You got to figure out, how do you pay attention to what's going on? How do you voice your concerns? How does your voice impact change, while not getting overly worked up over things that you cannot control, or focusing on things that have no bearing to the issue you're trying to solve. And that's, I think, the balance that that everybody's struggling with.
Yeah, because we're inundated with a ton of information all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
We are, which is why I love doing these podcasts. For a while, I was just wanted to take a break and not really do much of anything at all. But I think these podcasts are just so, like, regardless of how many views I get, regardless of how much money I make, which I don't make anything, I'm spending money. It's a money pit. It's still really therapeutic and really helpful to be having these discussions, because A, like, you grow a ton and you're always learning, and I always feel like I get a little smarter every time I have a guest on. And B, it provides so much more context to an issue that I'm less likely to get upset or overly emotional about what's happening.
Yeah, and
so
it's nice to have a conversation, and for somebody listening or watching this to listen to a conversation that's not people that are media trained and used to being in front of a camera and knowing how to talk. It's more raw. It's a real convo.
Although we both
On
of
a
us are
pedicab.
kind of yes, on a pedicab.
Said the title.
And
in
most
the movie.
convos on the pedicab, most Austin podcast ever. Although we are kind of media trained at this point through doing everything without getting official training.
I guess. I mean, I still feel like I fuck things up all the time.
Well, so does everybody. Anyway, Gary, how do we get a hold of you?
Instagram is Street Gonzo, and the documentary is on the Street Gonzo YouTube channel.
Okay, Gary, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Good to be back, dude.
Dude, for
Good
sure.
to see you.
Yes, sir.